Hello, everyone. I am John Swanson, and welcome to this webinar promoting livable communities and safer streets. We're very excited to have you all here, and we got a great lineup today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We're going to be posting a recording of today's webinar, and so you can review it later. Also, I want to note that this session is available for one credit from for AICP credit from the American Planning Association, so you can sign up for that. The reports for all of these projects are posted on our website. We just got them all up fairly recently, so have a look at that if you want to dig deeper. Closed captioning is available. There's a WebEx link that you can use if you'd like to make yourself avail yourself of that. Today's presentations are going to be high-paced, and if attendees want to dig deeper, as I mentioned already, the reports are posted on our website on a database. We will be taking questions at the end, and so you can put your questions in the chat. We may not have a whole lot of time, but we'll try to get back to you after the program if necessary. And so we're going to get started. I'm going to be the first one to go here, and then we're going to actually, Leo, can you pull up the agenda just a second? This is the list of the folks that are going to be speaking today. From Alexandria, Rockville, Prince William, Fairfax County, Prince George's, Gaithersburg, and another second presentation from Alexandria and the city of Fairfax. I'm going to do an overview first. So Leo, you could pull that up for me. And it's going to be on a timer. As you maybe read, this is using a Pecha format. So that's the second slide. Here we go. Hey, I'm John Swanson. I'm a planner at the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board here at COG, and I'm really excited that you've all decided to join us to hear about some great local planning projects throughout our region, projects that are promoting vibrant communities, active transportation, and safer streets. We're going to be talking about these programs today: the Transportation Land Use Connections Program, Regional Roadway Safety Program, and Transit Within Reach. We're going to be using a Pecha format, which is Japanese for chit chat. We've been doing this now for the last couple of years. Pecha format is sort of like a conveyor belt. Each speaker has 20 slides, and each slide automatically advances after 20 seconds. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. It's very fast-paced, though. It's kind of fun. It gives you all a smattering of information, and if you want to dig deeper, we do have a website where you can do that. So we can start with some background on the TLC program. Since 2007, it's nearly 20 years, we've funded 186 projects that we think have really made a difference in countless ways at the local level throughout our region. These aren't just regional projects. This is a regional. This aren't just local projects. This is a regional program. And last year, this program was last month. The program was awarded the National Capital Chapter Area Award for Outstanding Program from APA. The program has its origins in regional planning. 20 years ago, we were looking at big picture questions. What if there were more development concentrated and it was mixed use? What if we built more transit and sidewalks and bike paths? Our analysis found that these kinds of changes could make a difference, but when we talked to folks at the local level, they had some concerns about them. They wanted to know that streets were going to be walkable, that biking was going to feel safe, that we were going to be addressing equity. We also knew that there's a lot of great planning happening at the local level, but local planners really needed a little extra help to explore innovative ideas or to move important but non-urgent projects off of the back burner, and in general to make good projects even better. So that's why we started the TLC program in 2007. We do it with a very simple model. It's a consultant-led program. The projects are consultant-led. We fund them up to $100,000. The projects typically last 6 to 8 months, and we fund planning or design. This is really a very sort of small scale, quick turnaround program. We've also created a sister program. It's called the Regional Roadway Safety Program. This is really designed to address some of the really alarming trends that we've seen nationwide and in the region regarding safety and increased accidents and incidents on our roadways. A few years ago, a regional study identified factors that contribute to our safety problem and recommended what could be done to reduce fatalities and injuries. Based on strategies in that study, we established the Regional Roadway Safety Program to fund short-term projects to make our roads safer, and that's particularly for folks who are walking and biking. In the past 2 years, we've funded 28 projects that take very practical steps, things like planning for infrastructure improvements at intersections and sidewalks, improvements in lighting and signage, designing new guidelines and standards, and conducting safety audits and analyzing crash data. And finally, I want to tell you about a new program, relatively new, that's going to make it easier for folks to get to and from train stations and bus stations in our region. This is the Transit Within Reach program. We're going to be featuring one project from this program later on from Fairfax County. But the idea here is simple. In principle, trains and buses should be within reach for a lot of people in this region because more than half of the region's job growth over the next decade is expected to be within a quarter mile of high capacity transit. But even where transit is physically close, it is often not within reach if you walk or bike. Sidewalks are missing, crosswalks are unsafe, trails and paths are yet to be built. So the Transit Within Reach program was set up to fund preliminary engineering and design for ped and bike improvements. And again, we're using the same model that we use for the other two programs I described. We have a few of these projects currently underway, and we're going to be funding a few more next year. The application period for that will be next fall. So as you can see, these programs fund local projects, but we really do want to emphasize that this is a regional program. And that's one of the reasons we do regional webinars like this, so you can all learn from each other. And that's one of the reasons also why we have this awesome database where you can download reports and learn about all the different projects and sort by project type. Finally, I'm going to close with an important announcement. In January, we're going to be opening the application period for the next round of funding for both TLC and the Roadway Safety Program. The application period is going to open on January 6th. You can submit an abstract to get some quick feedback, and the deadline is going to be on March 7th. So with that, we're going to get started on the program. The first person up is Alex Carroll from Alexandria. Hi, Alex. Alex has been making really good use of these programs in recent years. She's a real strategic thinker, and I'm excited to see what she has to share about this one was the Pickett Street project, right?
Great. Okay. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alex Carroll. I'm the Complete Streets Program Manager with the City of Alexandria. This project is the South Pickett Street Corridor Improvements Project that was awarded to the city last year under the TLC program. We worked with RK&K Consultants on this project for about 9 months or so. The project area is South Pickett Street between Duke Street and Edsel Road. On the west end of the corridor, it connects to further along South Pickett with bike lanes. And then on the eastern end of the corridor connects to the future Duke Street Transitway, which is one of our major BRT corridors. So opportunity to make some significant connections here. The current roadway looks like this. It's a 4-lane undivided roadway. There's very few crossing opportunities. There's no dedicated bicycle facilities, very few dedicated turn lanes. So it really just makes it a challenging environment for all users. And there are bus stops along the corridor that are difficult to reach as well. So this is a snippet of what South Pickett Street looks like. This is looking towards Duke Street. As you can see, it's a very auto-dominated corridor with wide lanes. There's a lot of driveways, particularly on this end of the corridor, that create a lot of opportunities for conflict and have resulted in a lot of crashes, which I'll get to in a moment. Here is that same spot along the corridor looking in the opposite direction. And here you can really see how uncomfortable it can be for people to walk along this corridor. There is a sidewalk, but it is quite narrow and there is no buffer from fast moving traffic. And there's just a lot of driveways that people have to cross. Here's another section of the corridor, more midway through the corridor. It is not uncommon for people to bike here, but there is no dedicated bicycle infrastructure today. Today, their choices are to either ride on the narrow sidewalk or to share a lane with fast-moving motor vehicles, which can be a pretty uncomfortable experience. There's also a lot of commercial activity along this corridor. There is a Home Depot and a few car dealerships. So that, of course, generates a decent amount of truck activity. So that is something that we are cognizant of at the beginning of this project, and ensuring that through the project design that we accommodate trucks throughout that process. There is a significant crash history here. There were over 85 crashes in 5 years on this half mile of corridor. Over half of those were angle crashes. And then about a third of all crashes resulted in some kind of injury. And that includes one fatal crash that occurred at the intersection of South Pickett Street and Duke Street. When we asked folks what their concerns were with South Pickett, the top concern that we heard was that people drive too fast. We also heard that there are concerns about lack of crosswalks and lack of dedicated bicycle facilities. And then about a quarter of folks told us that there are too many traffic delays on South Pickett Street. So we took all of that information and we developed a recommended cross-section shown at the bottom here. That's a road diet that consists of one travel lane in each direction, a median that can also function as a turn lane, and protected bike lanes. And that pretty much mirrors the recommended cross-section that was in the small area plan for this corridor. In addition to the concept design, we also proposed a speed limit reduction from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. The idea being that we could reduce the frequency and severity of crashes and then provide a consistent speed limit across the entire South Pickett Street corridor and not just in this singular project area. This project does benefit all users. So if you're driving, you can benefit from the safety benefits of a left turn lane. People walking have safer crossing opportunities. People biking will have a dedicated place to bike. It'll be easier to access bus stops along the corridor. And then, of course, everybody can benefit from a slower speed limit and just slower speeds along the corridor. This project also features a variety of treatments that are classified by the Federal Highway Administration as proven safety countermeasures. And so because of those documented safety benefits of all of these treatments, we would expect that after implementation, that the average annual crashes that we see on the corridor would decline. South Pickett Street has about 13 to 15,000 vehicles per day, which according to the FHWA makes it a good candidate for a road diet. We did perform a traffic analysis with support from RK&K and found that the corridor would continue to operate acceptably and that delay would remain virtually unchanged. We did do a lot of community engagement on this project through all the means and methods that you see on this slide, including door-to-door engagement with businesses. So there are a lot of businesses on the corridor. We wanted to reach out to them directly and make sure that they had an opportunity to learn about the project and speak with the project team. And when we asked people what their priorities were, about half of folks said that minimizing motor vehicle delay was important. But at the same time, about 2/3 of people said that safe pedestrian crossings and safe travel speeds were also very important. And so we incorporated all of these things into the project concept design. So on July 22nd, the Traffic and Parking Board held a public hearing and voted to endorse the staff recommendation, which includes the concept design for the road diet, as well as the proposed speed limit reduction. They voted 5-1 to advance the staff recommendation to design. However, subsequent to that public hearing, the city received a petition from a group of residents to appeal that decision to City Council. And so the primary concern from those appellants was that, traffic would increase on South Pickett Street, and then people would instead take Cameron Station Boulevard, which is more of a neighborhood street, as a cut-through option, and increase traffic and safety issues in Cameron Station. So in terms of next steps, the City Council public hearing is this Saturday, November 16th. And should City Council approve the staff recommendation and uphold the Traffic and Parking Board recommendation, the project will then proceed to design next year, and then project implementation would then occur thereafter. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I will turn it back over to John. Thank you.
Wow. Got a lot of value out of that, including a lot of public engagement. So, and also you're in the throes of it. So if we'd had this presentation a month later, would maybe even a different sort of ending. So that we'll stay tuned, I guess. Now we're going to hear from Brian Barnett Woods from Rockville, who's going to tell us about another study on Manatee Street, which was a complete streets feasibility study. Brian?
Ready when you are. Hi, good afternoon. That's going to be a tough act to follow, but I'm Brian Barnett Woods. I work with City of Rockville Department of Public Works, and I'm here to talk about Manatee Street Complete Street Study, which is a TLC project that we finished in June, and we've started moving forward for implementation, so I'm excited to bring it up. Manatee Street is a primarily residential street, but it also has connections to Montgomery College, Welsh Park, the Rockville Swim and Fitness Center, Beale Elementary School, Peg Santee Park, the Rockville Town Center area. That red line is Martin's Lane, and it is going to be a bike lane next year. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a good opportunity to provide facilities on this street. Our Bikeway Master Plan from 2017 provides 3 different types of facilities along this corridor. And I think the recommendations are all based on available right-of-way, so it's not the best practice to follow. And so we wanted to see what could we do on this street to help address concerns related to motorist speeding, how we could provide things for people walking and biking. To do that, we did a lot of outreach with the community. We did a lot of investigation and existing conditions, looking at where's their existing parking, where the existing traffic calming measures are, where's opportunity for right-of-way, obtaining right-of-way, or where there are opportunities where there won't be right-of-way, where we have sidewalks or we don't have sidewalks. We also listened to a lot of our residents. This corridor, the Rockville Bicycle Advisory Committee identified it as one of the top 5 streets for adding some kind of bicycle facility, and so we wanted to look at that. And a lot of residents have brought up issues along this corridor. And while those focus on intersections, they've all mentioned similar things. We don't like people speeding. So what did our findings come up with? Was actually pretty similar to what the residents said. The 85th percentile wasn't so fast, but there were incidents of people speeding. Sidewalk needed maintenance. Right-of-way, inconsistencies along the corridor made it difficult to provide a good facility. We also looked at crashes, crash histories, and we found a lot of angle crashes of people turning. We looked at volumes to see if we could do all-way stops. It turns out that we wouldn't be able to meet the warrants for all-way stops, but we could do traffic calming measures. And so we used all this information, all the comments from the public to come up with essentially 3 alternatives. This is the first alternative here, and it's what we call the quick build, low cost alternative, and it's to provide shared lane markings throughout the corridor. Sharrows aren't always the best bike facility, but if you can maintain low traffic, motor vehicle traffic speeds, and in residential areas, they can be really effective, and it's important to consider. So I wouldn't want to stop them. The next alternative is this one here, and it has a bike lane that goes in the northbound direction and there's shared lane marking in the southbound direction. It also eliminates one parking lane, which some residents didn't care for. And then our third alternative has parking lanes in both directions, which you can see here. It also eliminates all parking except for a short segment near the park, at which point the parking is, or the bike lane goes onto a shared use path. Our images here show the bike lane is having flex-post delineators. That's optional, but the buffer is not. And so we think that's really the minimum for providing a bike facility. For all alternatives, we want to have traffic calming because we recognize that before we can make it safer and more comfortable and better for people to walk and bike and use transit, we really do need to help encourage safer driving speeds, encourage more yielding. And so raised crosswalks, pedestrian refuge medians, curb extensions, bump outs, those sorts of things. So we brought these alternatives to the public. This is the bike lane one, kind of conceptually what it might look like, and they all hated it. Which was unfortunate because I think the bike lanes really could be an opportunity to narrow the lanes and encourage slower driving. But they viewed it as oh, this is just a bike project. That's not what we want for our community. So I think there was really an opportunity for improvement in messaging. Although, to their credit, they did support a bike lane along the section of Manatee that was near the college, which is shown in the middle here. They were really keen on daylighting intersections, kind of like what we have on the left at West Montgomery, and then also traffic calming. So here on Carr and Manatee, we wanted to have a raised crossing. to really help reduce travel speeds. The public also really like the idea of using pavement markings and flex posts to do bump outs that could be made permanent if they're effective, as well as providing a pedestrian refuge median as part of the traffic circle, which is in the southern part of this section. So the next question is, okay, so we have all these, how are we actually going to implement them? The city has a roadway resurfacing, asphalt, and concrete maintenance program. Next year, Manatee is on the list of streets that will be resurfaced. And so as that street is resurfaced, we're going to be implementing these improvements. These pictures here are of a different street, but it's kind of the process. As we go through this, we're going to put in those bump outs. We're going to put in those new pavement markings. We've already started to do that, and you can see here, we've replaced the raised crossing with a more visible one. We've added pedestrian signage, a paddle sign that's in the street. You can see pavement markings to help prevent people from parking too close to that crosswalk. And actually next month we'll be adding we'll be adding flex posts to those pavement markings to further identify that. We've also been improving the sidewalk as well. This, you can see on the left side, is a broken sidewalk where it's buckled up. We saw that during our site visit, and we have since had our construction management maintenance come out and repair the sidewalk and put in a new one. And so we will listen to what the public is saying when they raise requests, but also what we see. We're really looking forward to bringing this project to fruition, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have afterwards. So thank you and have a good day.
Excellent, Brian. Thank you so much. Yeah, really kind of exciting to see how focused you guys are on implementation and also taking community comment into consideration. Next on the list, moving out a little bit, Prince William County, Kevin, going to be talking about the Yorkshire Multimodal Corridor Planning Study.
All right.
Hey, Kevin.
Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Kevin Wyrock. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager for Prince William County, here to talk about our Route 28 Yorkshire Multimodal Corridor Study that we did with our consultants at Foursquare ITP. Our staff leads were Bryce Barrett and Yolanda Ipsky. So the Yorkshire CDP is in Prince William County, bordering Fairfax, Manassas, and Manassas Park. It's a key gateway between each of these jurisdictions. Route 28 has a lot of cut-through traffic, and it's designated as an activity center in our comp plan. So it's intended to help, accommodate future regional growth and development. The study background explores how Route 28 and connecting roadways in Yorkshire can be reimagined to create more vibrant public spaces for biking, walking, taking transit, all multimodal trips. The purpose of the study is to provide actionable recommendations to build off of existing planned improvements that we already have. So our study process was assessing existing conditions, analyzing gaps in our network, engaging stakeholders, developing actionable recommendations, prioritizing our projects, creating cost estimates for those, designing cut sheets that show the improvements, and producing the final report. The most important study that's already been done is the VDOT Strategically Targeted Affordable Roadway Solution Study, or STAR study. It has a lot of roadway improvements already in there, and our intent was to build off of this study that was already taken place with an enhanced focus on the walkability, bikeability, and livability of the corridor and surrounding neighborhood. So our study area inventory showed that there is a very disconnected sidewalk network. Most of the sidewalks are in residential neighborhoods, not really connecting to Route 28. There were some gaps in the bicycle network as well, some connecting to outside parks, but again, disconnected overall throughout the corridor. We also did a demand analysis, seeing which parts of the area had people most likely to take transit trips, walking trips, biking trips, based on various demographic factors, such as non-white population, low-income, disabled, carless individuals, and you can see that on the right-hand side there. So when we went out and did our corridor audit, you could see the woman crossing with a stroller at the unmarked crossing on the top left-hand corner, but we also saw lots of curb cuts on Route 28, missing crosswalks, sidewalk apps everywhere, slope issues that make it difficult to add capital improvements, and complex intersections. So our toolbox for recommendations has a lot of things that address things from a pedestrian perspective: crosswalks, eliminating curb cuts, tightening curb radii, signals, traffic calming, but also there's a lot of placemaking elements as well in our recommendations, including street furnishings and bus stop amenities, as well as shared use paths for bicycles. So we have a lot of sheets that look like this with recommendations for each individual intersection, refuge medians for pedestrians, crosswalks, placemaking such as artwork, enhanced bus stop amenities, shared use paths, and sidewalks. This is an interesting intersection because it's offset, so the recommendations have to be a little bit more site specific here. Tightening curb radii, eliminating curb cuts as much as possible, adding shared use paths and pedestrian infrastructure, not just to Route 28, but towards the adjacent neighborhoods along the side streets as well. Another example here at Route 28 in Bloom's Quarry Lane, roadway truncations, traffic calming to discourage cut-through traffic on neighboring streets because Route 28 has a lot of congestion, and some of the same recommendations here, such as refuge medians, tighter curb radii, those sorts of things. So this is a map showing the network that we want to have expand out from Route 28. You can see the shared use paths being added to different parts of the neighborhood, as well as the sidewalks along the side streets connecting to the greater neighborhood overall. And Yorkshire Elementary School is actually outside of the Route 28 corridor. So we took a special look at this area with recommendations for sidewalks, enhanced pedestrian infrastructure at the intersections, knowing there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood who walk to this school, and we want to make sure that we have a focus there. Our stakeholder and community priorities were somewhat similar. They differed a little bit. Safety is the biggest consideration, obviously, but also congestion mitigation was a big one too. Still very auto-oriented corridor, and some enhanced emphasis on economic development, bike ped infrastructure, and placemaking as well. So when we did our prioritization framework, safety scored highest, congestion mitigation was second, and bike ped, economic development, and access to transit flowed from that. Our charts there on the right, and we have high priority, medium priority, and low priority intersections, both on and off the corridor that we can address going forward. Using cost estimates that we developed using the VDOT project estimating spreadsheet, we were able to develop high and low estimates for each intersection in the corridor because it's different everywhere based on right-of-way needs, constructability, economic conditions, and we also include a 20% contingency for each of these estimates as well. This is an example estimate. So for Route 28 and Bloom's Quarry Lane, you can see the low and high end estimate there. They almost double between the low and high end, and it really gives us a good range to target when we're looking for funding sources to make these improvements going forward. So our next steps are outreach to the neighborhood, including the Spanish-speaking community, conducting a small area plan that will guide future growth and development per the comp plan, integrating these recommendations into our ongoing efforts, such as the county's safety action plan and the VDOT STAR study. We need to identify and secure funding, such as federal and local grant programs, and partner with the arts community for placemaking. That is it. That was a lot to get through, but this is the vision that we have for this corridor, and I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Kevin. That was awesome. I love that. Loved seeing how robust this project was. Also, so much opportunity and need, obviously. But the jurisdictional complexity, which is, it's hard, it's mind-boggling. Manassas Park and Manassas and
they
all came together at that point. It's a big challenge. So
yeah, and they were stakeholders too, and they were involved throughout the process as well. So there was a lot of interjurisdictional planning and coordination as a result. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Now we're moving on to a project from our Transit Within Reach program, which focuses explicitly on 30% design and preliminary engineering. So Zach Desjardins from Fairfax is going to be talking about the Prosperity Avenue Road Diet project. Zach, take it away.
Okie doke. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zach Desjardins. I'm an active transportation planner with Fairfax County. We're going to talk about Prosperity Avenue. It's a 4-lane street that runs near the Dunlawing Metro. Oh, you can go to the next slide, actually. Thank you. Yeah, so Prosperity Avenue runs between Gallows Road and Hilltop Road near the Dunlowing Metro. The project area is highlighted in yellow. There's some existing bike lanes in green, and then I've also shown the vulnerability index. It takes various measures of how vulnerable people are within Fairfax County. And you can see there's a large block that's near the metro. So Prosperity Avenue was built in the early on in the 1980s as a 4-lane road. When Merrifield was warehouse oriented and auto oriented, and now, as you can see in 2024, the neighborhood has changed, but the road design has largely not changed. We did road diet one section in 2020, but the section closest to the metro, kind of the most important part, has retained 4 lanes. Oh, sorry, next slide, thank you. And so what we're proposing is to put that 4-lane section on a road diet. So that would reduce the number of lanes from 4 to 2 for vehicles. We'd propose upgrading the existing buffered bike lanes with a protective barrier and extending that through that road diet segment all the way throughout the corridor. Connects 4 different streets as well as a new trail along I-66. In terms of outcomes for people who drive, we did do a traffic study with the help of tool design, and found that we had very small increases in delays for drivers, just 1.5 seconds at the Marylee intersection and about 7 seconds at the Gallows Road intersection. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of outcomes for people who bike, today, right now, there's just sharrows on the 4-lane section of Prosperity Avenue. We're proposing to do a concrete barrier protected bike lanes, as much as we've seen in Arlington and Washington, D.C. Next slide, please. For outcomes for people who walk, we're going to significantly reduce the crossing distances by about half, and we're proposing banning right turn on red at many of the signalized intersections throughout the quarter. There are 9 crosswalks throughout, and so this would provide a significantly safer way for people to cross the street and get to and from the grocery store, and many other locations. In terms of next steps, we're likely going to construct the project with local funding. Stay tuned for a public meeting, likely in early 2025. We're including a survey. If you have questions after the presentation, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Awesome, Zach. Thank you. Again, a really exciting project. This one specifically oriented toward that metro station, a road that is, it's pretty wide and sort of is ready for a road diet. And I noted when I went out there, the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service out there as well. So that's a place where a lot of people who are transit dependent are needing to access. So tremendous need and a lot of opportunity. So thanks for that. And as I'm seeing in Fairfax, you guys are really moving forward with implementation, and that's another thing that we love to see here. I am going to move on. Wait a minute, who's next on the list? Who was next on the list? Was it Kevin?
Yep, it's me.
Kevin, sorry, I
That's okay.
got my list for a second. Yeah, are you ready to go? Prince George's, the bus stop safety study. Thank you.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Thornton. I'm with Prince George's County Office of Transportation. And we're here today to talk about our 2024 TLC Bus Stop Safety, Accessibility, and Prioritization Tool project. We work with Mead and Hunt on this effort. The intent of the project was to improve our process by which we provide safety enhancements and amenities to our bus stops. So in addition to the bus, our county is served by numerous transit services, WMATA, RTA, MTA, and UMD Shuttle. We have about 4,000 bus stops, and about 1,800 of those are served by the bus only. So why bus stops for the project? So first impressions are lasting impressions, and our bus stops often riders' first encounters with our bus service. A poorly designed bus stop can be detrimental to the efficiency of our transit operations. The concentrated areas of substandard bus stops may attribute to inequalities in income and accessibility. So how we got here, 2010, COGS TPB expressed support for a regional bus stop improvement program funded by a 2010 livability grant. So 2 models are proposed. Under one model, stops will be identified that lack ADA minimum bus standards. The second model uses a multi-objective approach, using ridership, population density, and usage data as criteria. Also, we noticed that the models operate under the assumption that all bus stops serve urban areas, which is a weakness in the methodology. Some of the elements of that methodology favor characteristics common to urban centers. Relying on historical accident data may overlook comprehensive safety risks, and by emphasizing proximity to key destinations, the purpose of the suburban and rural bus stops may be neglected. So our bus stop improvement program was developed based on the goals of safety and accessibility. We selected bus routes. Our county engineers and consultants evaluated those sites, consulted us on the placement and location details. And through this work, bus stops received standing pads, sidewalks were installed and widened, and our system connectivity improved. Some of those factors considered in the bus stop improvement were funding availability, complaints, and the number of riders. A portion of those bus stops were installed when bus stop placement regulations were not emphasized. In older neighborhoods, the cost of bringing a single bus stop to compliance could become very expensive. So enter the TLC award in 2023, and our report wrapped up this past summer. We're really excited about the possibilities of pairing the GIS tool with our bus stop improvement program. So the case study relevancy. Our primary piece of shaping the recommendations of this study was to look at what made the peer programs peer agencies bus stop programs work. Some commonalities were the tier style frameworks for their bus stop amenities. They had uniform bus stop design standards, and they shared methodologies that were data driven and community centric, which indicated a more comprehensive approach. So this is the idea that we think will advance our bus stops from tier 4 to tier 3 status. This will give us serviceable bus stops that meet ADA requirements. Data collected using the new GIS tool will allow us to identify tiers for each of our stops and inform decisions on where we place amenities, like shelters and benches. So we can envision a process that will enable us to qualify bus stops in our network. And that methodology of the process is to identify the current stop conditions, assign the stops in condition-based tiers, and improve our bus stop network by promoting tier 4 stops up to tier 3 status. So we'll qualify those stops by putting the GIS tool to work. Using our bus stop safety study app, we'll be able to collect extensive data at the stop level, statistical data like average daily riders, and informative data like proximity to schools and senior centers. And with important layers like justice, sporty, and equity emphasis areas, those layers will be valuable to help us assign bus stop improvements more equitably. We also expect the tool to prove beneficial to our bus stop program. And in addition to collecting important attribute data, we'll be able to document bus stop issues in real time. This will allow our bus stop database to better reflect current bus stop conditions. And as the database grows, we'll have the ability to query important stop information. And the acquisition of this tool really comes at a busy time for us in transportation planning for the county and the region. We foresee it being an asset to upcoming studies like the Purple Line, which may be right around the corner, but the better bus network redesign, and of course our ongoing bus stop improvement program. And thank you guys for your time and attention.
Awesome, Kevin. That was great. And just the enormity of what you guys are working with there, and the challenge is really, really impressive. As opposed to a small corridor, you were really looking at the whole county, and tremendous need. And hopefully this is something that we can feature in future presentations and the rest of the region can learn from. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Next, we're going to hear from Doug from Gaithersburg, who's going to tell us about the Safe Routes to School walk audit. Doug.
Hello all, I'm Doug Smith, Gaithersburg City Traffic Engineer, and I'm presenting on the Safe Routes to School study recently completed by Tool Design Group and generously funded by MWCOG. This drone shot shows Gaithersburg High School from above South Summit Avenue, looking across Frederick Avenue, which is Maryland State Route 355. So if you don't know where Gaithersburg is, we're north of Rockville, south of Germantown. The study area for this project consisted of areas around our Old Town neighborhood, which is east of I-270 and north of the Inter-County Connector, Maryland 200. This was based on the walking area for the 3 local public schools, Gaithersburg Elementary School, Gaithersburg Middle School, and Gaithersburg High School. Showing those walk zones, the high school uses the largest radius, which is about 1 mile extending out in all directions. The middle schools is about 1 mile, but only goes toward its north and west. And the elementary school's walk zone is about half a mile, again, only to its north and west. On the other hand, the attendance zones are far larger, especially for the high school and middle school. There, the students are up to 9 miles from the high school, almost as far from the middle school, which is many times larger than their walk zones. The elementary school is limited to a little over 1 mile, so only about twice its walking radius. This graphic shows the presence or absence of sidewalk in the study area, with blue lines on each side of a street representing sidewalk, while the lone red lines show gap segments with no sidewalk on either side. The worst gaps are primarily in clusters on older neighborhood streets in the middle here, off the main roadways. The busier and higher speed streets do mostly have sidewalk on at least one side. Here on the left, you can see the existing bike network, blue lines showing on-street bike lanes and green lines showing separated shared use paths. The shared use paths are more limited in the Old Town area closest to the schools. However, many of those lower volume streets do have the best level of traffic stress as shown on the right, including those that were missing sidewalk. Here on the left is a map of all bike and ped crashes from 2015 to 2022 in the study area, which are especially prevalent on Route 355 and on Summit Avenue. On the right are the severe and fatal bike and ped crashes, which again are focused on those busiest roads. On this graphic, the green lines show the bus loops for each school, and the pink lines show pathways for the parent vehicles, which mostly make separate loops at a different driveway at each school. At the high school, there is some overlap where special education buses use the northern driveway, and some parents use that as well. Next are photos of the parental vehicular entrance to Gaithersburg Elementary School, where the school driveway and the internal site roads lack sidewalk and curb cuts, forcing many pedestrians to walk in the grass or roadway or wait there while at the traffic signal. Even before this study started, parents had brought this to us as a concern, and we started partially addressing it. Some other pedestrian concerns near the elementary and middle school include a busy, uncontrolled pedestrian crossing at the Old Town Youth Center at the top left, an at-grade rail crossing that often has very long freight trains, and the narrow, unbuffered sidewalk along the west side of Summit Ave, just north of the elementary school. Concerns noted specific to the high school included missing curb ramps on site, large clusters of students crossing Route 355 on red and then overflowing its narrow median, and poor sidewalk winter maintenance along the east side of Route 355. Our observation was just after a snow day. Before and after our walk audits, the city team and Tool Design got to meet with the administrators and the security team of all 3 schools to go over general student commute information and all their specific issues and concerns with student commuting. This gave us a lot of useful context for our observations before and after each walk audit. So Tool identified key safety issues, which were almost all on Route 355, Summit Ave, and Teachers Way along the school frontage. These included signal improvements, crossing improvements, and other calming, including curb radius reductions. And we're aiming to address all of these through our initial project. Some other identified issues labeled quick wins were smaller things like curb ramp upgrades, better crosswalk markings, and crosswalk signage. We plan to primarily implement these recommendations as part of city maintenance work rather than as official capital projects. And then projects that were not the top priority, but for additional consideration, were primarily new and widened sidewalks, especially in this cluster near the schools where there's basically no sidewalk in the neighborhood. It's the Deer Park neighborhood. Also, traffic calming on Brooks Ave west of the elementary school, and then median crossing island on Girard Street at Teachers Way. So to illustrate an example recommendation, here's a sketch Tool did for the 2-lane section of North Summit Ave where the sidewalks currently need additional buffer. Most sidewalks of Summit Ave are a little wider and could maintain the third alternating left turn lane while still narrowing all 3 lanes to provide wider and more buffered sidewalks. Many of the high priority recommendations were for Route 355, which the city does not own. However, the county's planned BRT project will widen sidewalks and the median and narrow the travel lanes, addressing many of the existing concerns while also improving bus service, which some of the students use. As our first step to tackling the rest of the list, the city for sidewalks is proposing a phase 1 project to install the most feasible selection that will serve the most disconnected neighborhood and create a longer distance path between the south side of Old Town and the Washington Grove MARC station. We're considering 2 paths here that would be entirely within our right of way, sort of the northern and the southern on the west side. And the high school entrance on Education Boulevard currently includes a roundabout with very unclear lane assignments. We plan to create painted or raised islands in order to reassign the lanes, and we hope to add RFBs at the multi-lane legs, again, under the phase 1 project. And in addition to those projects, we do plan to address all of the other key safety issues, either under phase 1 or under other projects that we've already planned before. Here we see South Summit Avenue. At the top, we're improving one of the key signals at Diamond, and we're also planning to signalize the intersection in the middle, Old Town Avenue, which is very busy. Along with that, we'll do other general traffic calming and hope to calm traffic overall.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doug. And thanks to Gaithersburg for all the great work that you guys are doing, pulling a lot of different pieces together. I know this is really complementing some of the other work that's been funded through our programs for the shared use path between Old Town and Washington Grove. So it's great to see all these pieces coming together. The next on the list is we're going to be moving on to projects from the Regional Roadway Safety Program, a couple of those. And before we move on, though, I want to mention if folks have questions or comments, please share them in the chat. We have 2 more presenters, and then we're going to have, looks like we'll have a little time for questions and answers at the end. So please go ahead and share your questions. And now we're going to hear from Alexandria again. Brian Hayes is going to talk about a pedestrian lighting study out there. Brian.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk briefly about the City of Alexandria Regional Roadway Safety Project. It was a study to assess pedestrian lighting conditions and recommend improvements to enhance pedestrian safety in the city. Broadly, we took this as part of our Vision Zero work in an effort to make our city streets safer and easier to use for everybody. There were 4 bits to the methodology. This presentation will cover all of these except for the best practices, though the best practice research really did inform the field analysis and the recommendations. Okay. So the data analysis, we looked at a pedestrian and bicycle crashes from 2018 to 2023. There were 287 in the city, 128 of those, so just a little more, well, not quite half occurred at night. We focused in on those that happened kind of post-pandemic because driving patterns changed, but also because the city made a switch to LEDs. We looked at police reports, identified 5 locations that represented the diversity of the city's built environment and kind of road network and user base. This presentation is going to look at one specific location that is at the intersection of North Van Dorn Street and Maris Avenue. North Van Dorn is a 4-way road, 2 lanes in each direction. It is wide. People like to drive fast. The intersection with Maris Avenue has hawk signals, so they are pedestrian activated. There is bus stops on either side of the road. As you can see here, there are also street lights. These were updated in 2020 to LEDs. The incident that we're going to look at, there was a car driving westbound, a pedestrian kind of walking eastbound. The collision occurred when the car that was driving westbound made a left-hand turn onto Maris Avenue as the pedestrian was in the crosswalk. Police report showed that the witness was, in fact, the pedestrian was observed in the crosswalk. Witness countered that. The driver said that they did not see the pedestrian in the crosswalk. Why is that? So the main reason, and you'll see here in a second, is that even though there are streetlights, those streetlights don't tell the whole story. Horizontal illuminance shows us that the ground was really well lit. Vertical illuminance shows that maybe the area above the ground where the person is wasn't well lit. So maybe the driver could have seen the shoes. They definitely saw the crosswalk. They had a hard time seeing the person that was in that space. So one of the best parts of the project was going into the field with our engineers, our operations staff, police department, and the consultants to collect a bunch of data. We went to all 5 locations overnight one evening, learned how to use the tools, collected all of the readings. This slide shows some of those readings. Here we show some of those other readings. I don't expect anyone to look at and see, kind of read these readings. I think the main thing to see here is that in each of these crosswalks, you can see the crosswalk, but it's hard to see the pedestrian. Again, this shows that while the lights are doing an effective job at illuminating the road, they're not doing a great job at highlighting the pedestrian. This reflects kind of the high level learning that our lights are adequate, but really more can be done at these locations in particular, but more thoughtful kind of design can happen to make our crossings safer for pedestrians. This is a really good example. This is looking at the same intersection. The ellipses that you can see on the image on the left show the existing lighting patterns, which show we're lighting Van Dorn Street. There is a dotted pattern kind of at an angle, which shows how an additional light could be used to better illuminate the crosswalk across Van Dorn, but also this area of concern highlighted in red on the crossing across Maris Avenue, which is where the collision occurred. So kind of being mindful about how we use lights, not only to highlight the roadway, but also those areas where pedestrians are, is kind of something that we seek to look at. The recommendations, there are many. They include maintaining and updating our list of crashes, looking at our crashes every few years to make sure that we're identifying those areas where crashes are happening at night. Our built environment is always changing, trees are growing. So it's important to kind of identify those places where lighting may be a concern, and then prioritizing improvements that will impact the lighting. Working with our partners like Dominion Energy, who oversees our lighting network, training staff, identifying new funding opportunities to implement and install kind of new lights as we move forward. The consultant on this was KLS Engineering, the subcontractor was WSP, and of course, COG and TPB were great partners as well. So we learned a lot and look forward to kind of being more mindful with our lighting as we move forward and think about safety.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, it's such an obvious pun, but it's really illuminating to think of the kind of, some of the maybe I don't know if say obvious, but some of the real sort of opportunities and the ways in which a study like this can make a very direct impact. So looking forward to seeing the results of that. The final presentation is from Chloe Ritter from the city of Fairfax, who's going to be talking about the Main Street Road safety audit out there. Chloe.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Chloe Ritter, a transportation planner with the city of Fairfax, and TPB awarded us a regional roadway safety program grant to conduct this road safety audit on Main Street, which is a major arterial in the city. I'm going to share some highlights about the study background, the data we collected, some of the safety concerns we observed, and proposed improvements, focusing on a couple of locations. So the study corridor is about 1.7 miles long. It's the thick red line on this map, and it's part of Route 236, which is the dashed line. It's a major east-west connection through Northern Virginia between Fairfax and Alexandria, with high traffic volumes along the entire corridor and frequent crashes. It's also a priority corridor in the statewide plan. In addition to regional traffic, there is a really diverse mix of road users and destinations along the study corridor, with busy shopping centers, schools, several residential neighborhoods, and multiple transit routes. So we see a lot of people walking and biking and riding transit, as well as driving and coming and going from all of those neighborhoods, shopping centers. The road width varies along this corridor. There's at the widest point, it's about 100 feet wide with 6 through lanes. And then at the narrowest point, it's 60 feet wide with 4 lanes. And the speed limit drops from 45 to 35 to 25. And it also has a 25-mile-an-hour school zone. Rear end and angle crashes were the most common types of crashes that we saw in our 5-year crash data. Some of the contributing factors include driver age, distraction, and speed, and some other potential factors included access management and turning conflicts, and there were 2 pedestrian fatalities and 73 injuries as part of this. We also zoomed in on a couple of hotspots that were identified based on the total crashes weighted by crash severity. The 2 locations in the middle of the corridor are where we had the 2 pedestrian fatalities, and then there's a lot of traffic and a lot of conflicts at the 3rd location at Pickett Road. So we'll talk about those in more detail. Our consultant, VHB, led the road safety audit field walk with city staff and staff from the high school on this corridor to observe behaviors and conditions on the ground and provide a little bit more context to the data, other issues that we saw. And they also conducted a nighttime walk and identified a lot of areas with low lighting. So now I'll talk about the hotspots. The first one is a shopping center at Tedridge Boulevard, which has 5 driveways within 600 feet with access from a 2-way left turn lane. It's also right next to the intersection of Tedridge, which is a non-standard intersection. And there's a lot of turning movement conflicts and pedestrian conflicts here. So the recommended improvement for this area is to improve access management, replace the 2-way left turn lane with a median, and reduce the width of the signalized intersection to make it a more standard intersection. And we'll have to look a little bit more closely at how that's going to impact the increase of U-turns at nearby intersections. The second hotspot is at the intersection of Trapp Road and Lyndhurst Drive, which are offset from each other north and south of Main Street. There's a really wide median break that creates a lot of conflicts and confusion for vehicles turning left into and out of the neighborhoods. And there's a marked crosswalk, but it is unprotected, and it's about 100 feet wide across 6 travel lanes. This is where the other pedestrian fatality was. So we looked at a couple of options. I'm just showing one of them, which has a restricted crossing U-turn intersection or an R-cut, which would divert side street left turns to U-turns at other intersections. And we also looked at adding potentially a pedestrian hybrid beacon at this location. The third hotspot is at Pickett Road, which is the busiest and widest section of the corridor. Some of the specific concerns at this intersection included vehicle conflicts in a right turn slip lane, pedestrian vehicle conflicts at the corners, and low lighting on the crosswalks. And if you look closely at that dark image, you might or might not see the pedestrian there. Recommendations for this location include modifications to that slip lane, leading pedestrian interval, potentially with some other turn restrictions, and additional lighting at the crosswalks for all of the corners. So in total, this road safety audit identified over 30 potential countermeasures across the entire corridor. I just talked about 3 specific locations, but the report is organized to help us begin to identify priorities with some high-level assessments of the impacts and benefits for different user groups, and also assessments of potential costs and timelines to help us have a framework for beginning to implement the recommendations. And we are starting to work on some of those initial priorities, including funding to add lighting at several intersections. We are also proposing local funding to begin developing one of the concepts for the Trapp and Lyndhurst intersection improvements, and including other low-cost improvements with our maintenance program. So thank you very much to TPB for the program support and for this opportunity to talk about the project.
Great, Chloe. Awesome. Thank you for rounding that out. What a great, robust, and very focused project. And you, just like City of Fairfax, like so many of our partners, are just doing such incredibly good work and really impressive. And I think there's probably a lot that we can learn from all of you. We do have some time for questions and answers, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so it just gives me a chance to ask my questions, because I love this stuff, and it's a great chance for us all to hear from you. If folks could bring up their cameras, our presenters, that'd be helpful. But I'd just like to ask a really basic question. We're going to be entering into a new application period. as I mentioned, January to March. And what suggestions would you all give to potential applicants for the TLC program or the roadway safety program, or later next year, the Transit Within Reach program? Just some guidance suggestions.
John, I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
We've done this program for a couple of years now, and I feel like each time we learn new lessons about how we might want to do things differently.
Right.
One one of the things I think we've learned is as our project scopes get more, I mean, this is kind of basic, but it's still important to think about is what is super important for you to have the consultant to do versus something to do in-house. So, with some of our projects, we've been able to have the consultant do pretty much everything for us, including the outreach and analysis and all that kind of stuff. But then as we start to look at like longer corridors that do require more analysis, just be thoughtful about the trade-offs you might have to make to keep the scope within budget. So for one of our recent projects that was awarded this year, we opted to assume responsibility for all of the community engagement and producing all of the community engagement materials so that the consultant could focus most of their efforts on the analysis and the conceptual design. So I'm sure that lesson can apply to any project, but just being thoughtful about what you want the consultant team to do for you versus what you can do yourself.
Excellent, thank you. And I will say that as someone who reviews the applications and is not in a position to know what you're up against, it's really helpful if you folks do make that judgment call, because sometimes we look at these applications and think like, I don't think this is possible for $100,000, or or maybe they should be asking for more. So it really is, your guidance is really helpful, Alex. Other thoughts, suggestions for future applicants?
Well, I was going to Alex said a lot of the things that I was going to say in terms of being focused and thinking about, is the priority community engagement, or is it priority, coming up with a really targeted plan? And I think just being really clear about what the next steps are, because in my experience with a couple of these programs, it's been getting us to a really good point for taking the next step towards implementation, because I think that is really important, is to say, okay, well, how do we move on to getting funding or getting community buy-in for these projects, because you can only do so much within a year and with the limited budget. So really trying to think about how you're going to set yourself up.
Thanks. Yeah, great. So focus and thinking about next steps and sort of laying the groundwork for that. Other thoughts?
I was just going to build on what Chloe said. Is keeping it simple is key. We looked for a project that was, as simple and straightforward to construct as possible, and whatnot. And that's what you have at one of our projects. And I'd also say, we're looking at a lot of your existing plans, and see how those fit and make that case within your application that, this has been a priority for a while, but we just haven't had the funding to get to it,
Right.
And whatnot. And so, our Prosperity Avenue is kind of a good example of that. So.
Excellent. Brian Hayes.
Yeah, one of the things that, I think field work is someone who spends a lot of time in the office, one of the funnest things of my job. And certainly working with consultants in the field is really great. I think, open communication and kind of being flexible within the constraints is really important. With the lighting study project, we had, though we've had a very dry kind of autumn, we had a very wet summer, and we had to reschedule our evening field work like 5 or 6 times, it felt like, because of rain, right? The slightest bit of dampness on the pavement would impact the readings that we were doing. And so there were consultants coming down, the sub-consultants were coming down from like Boston, from around like the mid-Atlantic and the East Coast. And so it was like, we had to be really flexible, and there was a bunch of other people from departments in the city coming, right? And it was really worth it to be flexible and kind of build in those kind of communication, just being flexible and really communicating with the consultant and kind of having backup plans in place. It can be really challenging on like a 9-month project to have that flexibility built in, but when it's possible, be flexible, kind of roll with it. And I think that kind of speaks to keeping things simple and focused. The simpler the project, the more focused it is, the easier it is to kind of roll with the unexpected that comes up.
Yeah.
And having really good communication with your consultant makes everything better. Things left unsaid can come back to bite you later.
Yeah.
So
Particularly when there's not a lot of time.
yeah.
Yeah. Great comments. Any other suggestions, guidance, recommendations for future applicants?
John, I would also add to what Brian was saying as far as keeping the lines of communication open.
Yeah.
Also doing those initial meetings with your consultant, the coordination meetings. I think it's important to kind of really get expectations on the table to make sure that everyone is kind of not hit hit out of the blue with anything that they're expecting, but may not get, or vice versa, that kind of thing. So I mean, I think that getting expectations on the table and just managing those is a very important part of the process to get that laid out early on in the process.
Thank you. Yes.
There was one submitted
Julio.
question. The question is, for the walk audit related work, what is most able to be done without grant funding, and what is something that needs grant funding to be done?
Thanks, Leo. For folks who are involved with walk audits, what is most able to be done without grant funding, and what is something that needs grant funding to be done? I suppose that's relating to, well, we can interpret that as we like, but that could be, I suppose that's related to implementation. Any thoughts there?
So for the city of Gaithersburg, Safe Routes to School, a lot of the study probably could have been handled within the city. A lot of the engagement and the initial study, going into the conceptual design, and now the more detailed design. We're considering that a capital improvement project. We were thinking about using a grant for that, but ultimately these are relatively feasible projects. So we are planning to try to fund that internally.
Great. Leo, I can't seem to get access to the chat. I'm not sure. So if there are any other comments, could you let me know? Are there other comments in the chat from participants?
Yeah, no problem. That was the only submitted question so far.
Okay. I had a general question for folks, and we have 5 minutes or so left. What's the sort of, in terms of timing for these projects, and in terms of the work that you guys are involved in? I mean, this comes once a year, and so sometimes I get a sense of like, oh, these projects are a little bit early, but we can do it, or maybe they're a little bit late, but it still makes sense. Do you have any thoughts about the timing for these things, and so how they feed into future work? Because sometimes there's a sense that projects get you want to sort of time it just right to sort of be able to move on fairly quickly.
I can respond in part to that.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on what your next steps are outlined. And I'll point out a couple examples. So we had a regional roadway safety program project that we did in 2022, where they did a study, the consultant and the city did a study for a road diet on a short stretch in our town center. And then we use that information for a Bloomberg Philanthropies grant to get asphalt art. And that was another year process. So we kind of did, at the start of the TLC, we kind of thought about, okay, we have a year to, not the TLC, excuse me. I started the RRSP, we have a year to do this. Then we have a year to try and find this funding to get the design plus artwork. And then we have to do implementation. And so really chunking it out in a way to make sure like, okay, timeline will this fit? And it did. And I bring this up because we finished the project last week.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so everything's done, which is great. We also did um, a complete street study that turned into kind of like a study for a shared use path feasibility.
Mhm.
And we used the TLC from that then to lead into a transportation alternatives program grant to do the design. And that was a little tight because the TLC ended in June and the TAP grant was due in June. But we were able to use all the information from that TLC project into the
Right.
TAP grant. It was successful. So it was a little tight, but it was certainly doable. But I think because the TLC program has such a quick turnaround, it's actually really flexible in terms of being able to apply it to other programs that jurisdictions can use to leverage the funding sources or do implementation.
Thanks. That's actually a bit of a reminder, Brian, that the TPB, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Washington region, that's the board that we work for and this program is part of. It has a responsibility for project selection for the Transportation Alternative Set Aside Program, the TAP program, which is a federal grant program. So I think the key point there, which Brian just kind of alluded to, is that we do look favorably on TAP applications that are preceded by TLC studies or roadway safety studies, or studies that sort of are comparable to those, because we sort of understand sort of the work that's gone into it in advance and the prioritization that the local community has placed on that work. And so we love to be able to sort of continue to see that moving forward. I have a sort of a final question for you all, and this may seem a little bit self-serving, but one thing I think that people sometimes don't know, because this program is often called a grant program, and it's not really a grant program. We don't give you guys money. We actually give you technical assistance. We hire consultants on your behalf. And I'm only mentioning that because that is, as I've understood it over the years, a major benefit for this, that we do a lot of this administrative work for you on your behalf, and it's quite streamlined. So that is an advantage of this, and people who have done it over the years sort of have told me that they really like that. But I guess this is sort of a leading question. Can people talk about that on any level? And I feel like it's a bit of a point of encouragement for future applicants as well.
Yeah, I can start, John. That's a huge selling point for us at the city. It's not only the financial assistance that we're getting via the technical assistance, but it's also like the fact that we can be very hands off when it comes to the administrative side of the project. I don't know if I don't know about anybody else's jurisdiction, but City of Alexandria has had procurement issues for years now, where things just take an inordinately long time to do virtually anything. And so it is so helpful to us to just be able to have that process be streamlined and be on a fixed deadline too. I think that's
Yeah.
the other portion of it that's sort of a hidden benefit is
Right.
like in our community, people want to drag things out forever too. But when we're like, this project ends on June 30th, it creates a very fixed timeline for when we have to deliver results and come to a conclusion. So both the procurement side, super helpful, the administrative side, super helpful, and sort of the finite timeline are all benefits for us for this program, for these programs.
All right. Excellent. Alex, I think those might be the final words from you all, unless folks have any other pressing points to add.
Hey, John, there was one more question in the chat.
Yeah.
It was just, can you share the slides with the attendees?
Yes, we will be posting the presentation, and we can share the slides. This will be posted as a recording, and we don't actually have the slides available. I suppose we can figure out how to make them available. So yes, we will do that. I want to thank everybody for participating and helping to make this program, I think, really effective and sort of have a disproportionate impact throughout our region. I want to thank our consultants, who often are, they're often sort of missing in this discussion, but they really do such incredible work for us and really provide incredible value for some really pretty small projects that are not tremendously high cost. So thanks to our consultants. Thanks, Leo, for helping us today, and look forward to getting some great applications from you all, participants, some of the speakers. I'm sure we'll hear from you again, and maybe some new applicants as well. So thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.